At this time, Mr. President, we are going to move into closed session, so we'll ask members of the public to leave.
Thank you, Stephanie.
Thank you.
Do you show a quorum or anything?
Yeah, usually you should.
Yeah, you should do closed
First,
session, then
but-
roll call, and then, call to order, roll call, then closed session.
Right.
Would you like to do roll call?
Yes.
Our clerk isn't here, but I'm happy to
Yeah,
conduct
call
roll
roll
call.
for us, please. Thank you.
Director Estamarin,
Here?
Director Boyce,
Here.
Director Palmer,
Here.
Alternate Director Arakawa.
Here.
Thank you. We have a quorum.
Great, thank you, Stephanie. We'll go right to our closed session business. So we're in closed session now. Thank you. Okay, we're ready. Sorry, we're waiting for your video. Okay, we'll call the meeting back to order. We're returning from closed session. Becky, we'll move right along then. This is the time for open comment. Remember, I'm sorry?
I'm sorry, Director.
Oh, report out.
Thank you.
Yes,
Would you like me to do that?
yes, please.
Thank you. Reporting out of closed session, the board authorized legal counsel, general counsel, to participate on behalf of the DCA in a regulatory proceeding, and no action was taken under item B. Thank you.
Thank you, Steph. We'll move right along into public comment. The train keeps moving pretty fast. That's because we got a lot of little stuff to do today. So this is that time. Yes?
And President Estramere, if I might add, that we did receive 3 emails which have been provided to the public and to the board members there on your desk or in the back of the room.
Thank you, Jill. I was going to mention that that's part of the record now. Now is the time for members of the public to address us on any issue not on the agenda. So you're welcome to come up. I have no request to address us right now. And if there be none at this point, then we'll move right into our next, we don't have any, so we'll move right along to our next item, which is approval of minutes.
Oh, I have some changes
Yes,
to make to the
sir.
minutes? Yes, can you hear me? Okay. I'd like to have it noted that I was absent and that we had an alternate serving in my stead.
I think we noticed that, but
Yeah, you might notice
Wasn't
that,
in it.
but it wasn't in the minutes, so, yeah.
thank you, Sarah.
It was a nice Monday.
Your presence was felt. Okay, anything further? I don't
Make a
think.
motion that we approve the minutes as Sarah has mentioned.
Second.
Second?
Those in motion say aye. Aye. Those say no. We move right along to our consent calendar. There being none, we'll then move along to our discussion items. We'll start by considering the resolution regarding adoption of the bylaws. So, let us let's start with the bylaws. And what I will do is call on any member that might have changes, questions, suggestions, and then we'll just move down the line. So, anyone want to start?
Did you want to
Yes.
have the staff report, or would you like to just review it and you'd like to just move to
Let's hear
comment?
staff.
Sure. Might answer all the questions.
Great. This item is to pass a resolution to adopt bylaws for the DCA. The basis of the bylaws, because we did have a formation agreement that had a lot of detail regarding membership, meetings, location of meetings, and things of that nature, is consistent with that agreement. In fact, it does reference that formation agreement. Additionally, this resolution and attachment of the bylaws, it covers sort of the basics of running and the rules for the DCA regarding membership, voting, meeting location, quorum, offices, committees, powers, and finances. And again, it is consistent with the existing the DCA formation agreement. And I'm happy to answer any specific questions you might have.
Okay, so we'll move right along with questions.
have an ignorance question.
No such thing.
Okay, well, yes, there is, you'll see. Not being a lawyer, I had a question in terms of what a common law employee was.
That would be, right now, you don't have any common law employees because you have all consultants, and it's not anticipated that you would have any, but in case there is ever a common law employee or someone you would hire directly as an employee and not as a consultant, that would be covered.
Okay, so independent contractors of the authority shall remain a common law employee, is that what that
Yep.
means? Okay. Ooh, I have another question.
What?
Okay, in terms of the quorum, it says majority of the board directors. Now, it says alternate directors attending shall not be counted as part of any meeting quorum, so that, I just wanted to make sure that that was clear.
That's correct. The
Okay.
alternates are not considered unless in the absence of the actual member.
Oh, I
They
see.
only
So
count in the absence,
so even if there is no other member, the alternate might be considered part of the quorum.
So,
Only in the absence of the member.
Okay, gotcha.
For
so,
whom they're-
for
Only the
example,
alternating.
if you were absent, the only person who could count towards the quorum would be your alternate. It couldn't be another alternate of another, a different seat.
Okay, so the designated alternate. Okay, got it.
Anyone else?
Mr. President, as a non-attorney, I've reviewed these bylaws that have been drawn up by our council, and I find them appropriate. And therefore, I'd
Well,
like...
before, I have some suggestions for changes.
You do.
So before...
I'll let you have it.
Okay, let me just go through what I have since no one else has any suggestions for changes. Page 4. Actually, it should be right after the travel policy, which is on page 3. And that's the provision for compensation in the general agreement. There is an enabling sentence there, and I think that should be incorporated here. We're not talking about that now, but just so it should be consistent with the main agreement. It should just be transferred onto here.
What is that?
That there's a provision for reimbursement, and there's a provision for compensation in the main agreement, so I'm just saying it should be in here also, because it's consistent.
Director Estamera, I'm happy to do that if that is the board's desire as a whole. The travel policy in this document, it essentially says that we would adopt a policy. And so I may suggest to you that it might be in your interest to adopt a policy to cover that rather than have that in the bylaws, and that policy would be consistent with the formation agreement. In the event
Fine, I
that the
just thought
board...
there should be an enabling
Well,
provision.
this does enable us. In other words, this means that, yeah, we can do this, and it would be appropriate for us to do it. It doesn't really nail it down at this particular point in time.
Correct.
Well, since it's not in here, that's why I raised this. But if everybody's satisfied that it's in there, although it's absent, then we'll go to page 6. 6.6 agenda. Generally, at least in my district, maybe in the rest of your districts, but in my district, since these meetings are meetings of the board, the agenda is always approved by the president because of that, because it's our meeting, and so we shouldn't have any staff approve the agenda for us. When the questions about the agenda, generally, even in these bylaws, the questions are always presented to the president, and if there are any requests to include issues on the agenda, they are addressed to the president. So that's why it should be consistent, that the president should approve the agenda. So I would suggest that just be included in there.
Maybe executive director shall prepare the agenda to be approved by the president for all meetings?
Yeah, I just figured you could, yeah, that's fine like that. Page 8. on membership, the same thing in the standing committees, and it says that the board will appoint members of the committee. It's kind of tough to have the board do everything. So my suggestion is, again, consistent with probably the practice of all of our boards, is that the president nominates and the board approves the members. And the same thing with the officers, the chairs on the next page, which is on page 9 on top, where it says all standing committees shall be noticed, held, and conducted. The same thing, I think the president should nominate and the board should approve. And that's all I have. So if those suggestions are okay, then I entertain a motion.
That seems to be consistent with how most of us run our
That's why I was thinking,
Yeah.
it's just pretty consistent with our practices.
You know, I have no issue with those amendments.
I just want to be clear so that we know what we're adopting.
Yes.
I think what I heard was on page 6 under the agenda that the executive director shall prepare and the board president shall approve the agenda. So it's in addition to that the board president approve the agenda. On page 8, 8.1, standing committees, to make a revision, it says the president will nominate and the board will approve the committee members.
Yes.
And finally, on page 9, in regards to the standing committees, that those would be, the members would be nominated by the president and approved by the board.
Oh, one other thing,
Yes.
though. I think in the beginning it says establishing the standing committees is different from nominating members of the committee, so you might want to...
Sorry, could you make, are you on page 9?
I'm on page 8 still, basically under standing committees, because it says the board may from time to time establish standing committees. You might say the board, or the board president may establish standing committees and then nominate with approval of the board. Those would be two separate things.
A question on that.
Yes,
So with these bylaws, are the standing committees established by the bylaws and then the president makes appointments to the standing committee, or is the president establishing the standing committees?
I just heard two different things, so that's why I'm trying to be very clear here, because I think this is important. The first option that I heard was that the standing committees would be established by the board, but the nomination would be by the president and the approval by the board. And I think what Director Palmer just said was that
Yeah, I was just...
the establishment of the standing committee would be by the board president.
Maybe the first one that you were saying, where the board establishes the
Yeah, the board
committees and the
establishes.
president nominates with
and the
approval by the
approves.
board. Does that make sense?
Yes, that's.
It's the first option, is that clear?
The board establishes the standing committees and the president,
Nominates the members.
yeah, I understand.
To be
The board
approved by the
approves.
board.
Yeah, oh, that's consistent with our practices.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Okay.
Yeah, but we haven't established any standing committees in
Right,
this.
That's true, I understand that, yeah.
Okay.
Actually, to be clear, we have established the environmental compliance.
We have one.
Oh, we have
That
one,
was
okay.
formed upon formation of the DCA.
Yes.
The formation agreement.
Okay.
We have established one, yes.
Yeah, but this paper, this thing doesn't establish anything. It just designates the establishment of. That's right, okay.
Okay, so Steve, I'll entertain that motion now with these changes.
With the changes that President Escamera has suggested, I will move approval of these bylaws.
And I second.
Okay, motion second for approval of the bylaws. Any further? Those for motion say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed say no. Passes unanimously. We'll move right along then to our next, let's see, resolution number 18-7. conducting DCA business.
Thank you. This is actually an ethics policy. As you are all aware, as a public agency, we have a number of rules that we have to follow. This ethics policy and this resolution is really guiding the DCA board members and consultants, employees, ethics. So the rules or laws are really the floor, and this goes a bit farther to talk a bit more about what the expectations are for the DCA. And so that's what this attempts to do. In general, the objectives are to establish a uniform guidelines and operating procedures for the board of directors, to heighten awareness of ethics and values and critical elements in directors' conduct, to provide guidance for dealing with ethical conflict issues, and to improve ethical decision-making and value-based management for the DCA. I'm happy to answer any questions.
I do have a change for suggestion, but I'll entertain the members first.
No, Sandra doesn't have any.
You have no suggestions?
Okay, I just have a suggestion on, let's see, page 8. Page 8 on DE. It says, the board hereby delegates all necessary authority to respond. It says, who shall consult with either the president of the board or, if unavailable, one of the other directors. And I just want to suggest that just be the vice president, just so it's a little bit more orderly. Because then if you talk to one person, you don't know. And then we have alternates, so I think it's just a little bit more orderly to say president or vice president.
President Escamera, the way it's written, I think that if it were me, you would certainly go through, but we've left it a little bit more open because if you can't reach either of them, we want to have the flexibility to go through and reach at least one director. We're talking about a real emergency situation.
Yeah.
I doubt it would happen. We had a similar language in my former role, and in the 11 years I was there, I never had to use it. But this gives somebody who's in an absolute crisis who calls you and then calls Director Atwood and can't reach either of you to then go through the rest of the directors until they find somebody.
But there wouldn't be a problem, I think, in contacting multiples, because that would be the flow.
Oh, yeah, well, I expect that, we'll contact everybody. Okay, if we're satisfied with that, that's fine. I'll then entertain a motion to approve
I move
that
that,
as written.
okay, I move that we approve the resolution on ethics as written.
Second.
Motion to second then to adopt this resolution on ethics. Those for the motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say no. Adopted unanimously. We'll move right along. To our investment policy.
Yes, thank you, Chair Estromera. What we have before you is a proposed investment policy. It's consistent with California Government Code. Under the California Government Code, the authority to invest the authority's funds is delegated to the board, who then can in turn delegate it to the treasurer, which is what you have done. And so this policy basically does a couple of basic things. It sets out the objectives of the investment policy, which is safety, liquidity, and yield or return. Obviously, safety of the money that we invest is paramount. And it also establishes the types of securities we can invest in, the kind of creditworthiness those investments need to have. And it also provides us with limitations on how much of the portfolio can be invested in any type of security. It is consistent with the state guidelines, and so we would recommend approval. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Thank you. Any questions? Any suggestions?
Just also, I would say that this has to be adopted every year. So this policy, the authority, the delegation to the treasurer is good for a year, and this policy would come back to you annually, and I would suggest that we would probably do it in the June meeting so that it would be effective on a fiscal year basis.
Our fiscal year is July to,
Right.
okay.
Questions?
No,
Entertain a motion?
I move we approve.
Second.
Motion for approval is second of this policy with respect to investments. Those in motion say aye. Aye. Opposed say no. Adopted unanimously.
Not only that, I'm going to give a copy of your glossary to the
Very good,
investment
yes.
club.
Very, very good. The next one then is resolution to adopt protest policy.
Thank you. We are embarking on a number of RFPs and RFQs, and so as you are well aware, this agency is likely to be issuing many contracts through a competitive bidding process. Before we start awarding any contracts, we felt that it would be wise to establish a policy that the board is comfortable with so that all of the protests that are received are handled in a similar fashion. And this policy would ensure that. As you can see, the resolution just adopts the policy, and it's a very simple protest policy, and hopefully we never receive one, but in the event that we do, it does provide sort of the timelines, the exclusive remedy to the contract, to the bidding contractor, and then the right to award. And that is simply it. It's a one-page protest policy. Happy to answer any questions. Again, staff is recommending adopting this.
Thank you. Questions?
I like the simplicity of this policy.
Yes.
Yeah.
To do this on one page is good.
Yes.
I have a question.
Yes, yes.
So is there anything unique about this protest policy?
No, it's not unique. I would just say that it's more streamlined than a lot of agencies, but it has the basic requirements. We were trying to keep it as simple as possible for administration purposes.
So it just looks to me like the only type of protest then is that somebody could say, well, what do you mean by the best value and what do you mean by the most qualified and that. Yeah. Well, we don't have to get some help.
Well, no, public's invited to always address us on each issue as we call it.
Okay.
At the beginning, it's anything that's not on the agenda.
Yeah.
The items that are on the agenda, the public is always welcome to comment as we go along. Did you have a question?
I just wanted to add maybe, so streamlined, but in terms of what it does in handling requests for bid or requests for statement of qualification or request for proposal, the essence of it is consistent with other agencies' types of policies. There's nothing different.
So that's correct. Again, this is not to change the requirements for how we put out the RFQs. And this just is to say how we're going to process any protests that we receive. So it doesn't change the procurement policy.
Is it necessary, I mean, I noticed that if there's a protest, they have to be no later than 5 working days. Do we have any limitations on our timeline of addressing the protest?
That's fairly typical, and I've seen that same, 5 working days is a week. So they're notified, they're usually on top of it. That's,
Yeah, but what I'm asking is that I understand, but in terms of our response, is there a guideline in terms of the timeliness of our response on that?
So that doesn't provide a guideline. It gives us some flexibility for the reason that as you look through and you look at number 3, we have to respond to an investigation. It's very difficult to say we're going to do it within 10 days not knowing what we might receive. So this gives us the ability to make a reasonable response, but to have the ability to look at the facts and to really investigate what is in the protest.
Right, no, it makes sense to me, but I just wanted to make sure that it was, the right thing to do here. Well, I move that we accept it, we approve it.
Second.
Any further questions? Those to the motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say no. Unanimously adopted. Protest policy. We'll move right along then to our next one. We're going to consider the logo option. This is the hardest.
That one.
it might be the hardest, yes, but I think it's very important for the agency the DCA to have a logo.
Yeah.
Okay, now this we need public comment on.
I have some comment.
This would really help us.
I have some real comment on this one.
Yeah,
I do.
yes, sir.
Okay, look at logo 1 and logo 3. I'm sorry, guys, but that looks like a butt to me. I mean, who did that? And I won't even comment about what number 1 looks like. Let's keep this polite. Yeah,
And the concept was the double tunnels.
yeah, I understand, but you could have done like a Venn diagram or something like that, but yeah, no. And number 2 looks like kind of an officious lapel pin. You know, you can't really read it. Number 4 is clear. Not that I have an opinion about anything, obviously.
All right, now we really do need public opinion.
Okay.
Okay, what do the rest of our members think?
I like
Until
number
we
one,
can get right. I like
but I really don't care.
I like number 1.
Looks like a butt.
I think either number 1 or number 4.
It's a drop of water.
It looks like a butt.
I guess number 4 is different than kind of a more agency-oriented logo, like a state agency or such. So I think that's why either logo 1 or logo 4 seems to pop out for me.
And just to clarify, WaterFix has been using this sort of triple drop, so it provides some continuity with the WaterFix that's been used up until now, as does number 2, which looks like your officious lapel.
Lapel. Yeah, sorry. I mean, it's appropriate. Yeah.
Okay, let's do this. Why don't we just vote on
We should get some.
each one, since we haven't been able to rile up any members of the public. I know at our meeting, we would have had 50 people show up and raise cane and tell us exactly why none of them work.
I showed them to my marketing daughter and she said, what were they thinking?
We should have gotten an alternative.
I have an alternative and I wouldn't even charge you for it, but it's not there.
Okay, let's do this. Why don't we just, I'll just point to, we'll start from 4 back and we'll vote and see whichever one gets the most votes wins. And then if we get public comment in the future, we can always change it. How's that? Okay, let's start with number 4. Who likes number 4?
I do.
Okay. 1 for number 4. Who likes number 3? 0. Okay, that one's out. Okay, who goes for number 2? Okay, that one's out. Who goes for number 1?
Oh my God, are you kidding me, you guys? You know what it looks like?
Yeah, it's a water drop. Yeah, it's a water drop.
No. It looks like something's happening there. I mean, seriously, we will be the butt of jokes with that one.
You could always use number 1 and take out the green item.
I still got butt there. You might want to take out the green item, at least then it's just a butt about to do a surface dive. That's okay, it's water. But, yeah, I want to take out the green item for sure.
So, Sarah, you like number 4? You really object to number 1.
I just think, I'm sorry, it just makes me laugh. It makes me laugh. Which I don't know if that's what we really want to do, but
No, but that's good that you're laughing. That's
I'm
all
laughing.
right.
Okay.
Nothing wrong with that.
And a little humor,
Well, Director Palmer, with all due deference, I prefaced my remark by I really didn't care. So if you do care, it looks like you do, I'll switch my vote to agree with you. How's that?
Okay.
Same here. I'm okay with number 4.
Okay. I'm sorry,
I
I'm
still like
puerile.
water.
I'm puerile. I was gonna tell you.
I still like the watermark. That number 4 looks too much like a state agency. It really looks like, we're trying to differentiate ourselves from.
Well, here, we can do this.
Why don't we do number 1 and take the tree or whatever that is off? How's that, sir? We'll take the, whatever the green thing is.
Look, 2 tunnels.
No, that's.
Venn diagram, I
that's
love Venn
too-
diagrams. Okay,
That's way too, let's take the green thing out, how's that?
it's still good, still a buzz.
Yeah, that's okay. Let's
You want a
have,
buzz?
oh, we got public comment. Hi, Mark.
Mr. Chairman,
Good afternoon.
this is so entertaining. You know, I just, I recognize the importance of the symbols. They really communicate a lot. I really like, as just a young member of the public, somebody who lives in the Delta, removing the green thing as a green object, not responding to the comments that were made by the fine lady in the end. I'm not trying to imply anything
I
here.
didn't play anything.
But the presence of the green color, which is forgetting about logo number 3, of course, is present, I think is a really important element in any overall design. So removing the item at number 1, forgetting about the symbol, the shape and all that, absent that color, I think detracts from an important dimension of what you're trying to accomplish. So that would be my comment. Find a way to, if you're going to go in direction of number 1, understanding it's a prop, not a state agency, typical logo, all of that, finding a way to have some green color in there in an important way, I think you would lose something significant in what you're trying to project if you strip out the green. They're said 3 ways. So.
Yes, if I could add to that, the reason that the logo designer added the green was to show basically what we've seen, plants grow where water flows.
Fresh water. Okay. So what about a pear tree instead?
That works.
Well, we see a lot of pear trees last night, right? And obviously there are a number of farms in the Delta that have an awful lot of pear trees. We got lost in an orchard last night.
We could maybe start greenness above the DCA without coming out of the tunnels.
For the teal doesn't change the green.
True. Yeah, you could change the dark blue to a green or something, I don't know. At any rate, you guys,
So maybe there's a way that we can
it's okay. Do
gravitate towards logo 1 with some refinements.
With,
I think it's good that we got some public comment from the Delta area. So
Yes.
that's good.
Maybe, like I mentioned, maybe a pear tree, because that's more native to what being grown in the Delta.
or a line of grass at the top or green at the top without coming out of the intersection between the 2 parts at the bottom.
Okay. All right.
So, again, I'd like to clarify what my role is in this. If I ask him, the gentleman who developed these 4 options, to come back with another next month, is that what you'd like?
Sure.
That's fine.
Yes. That's a good idea, but it's, so this is
Variations on number 1.
Yes, this is the most controversial issue that we have dealt with so far, which is a good thing.
It's good to have a little,
Well, we thank you, Mark, for your comments, appreciate that. Okay, that sounds good. Let's do that, that's constructive. Okay, then we'll move right along then to the executive director's report.
You have my written report. If there are any questions, I'm happy to field them.
Any questions?
Nope. General Council's report.
You've been doing a lot, and I see that you're still chasing space for us, so that's welcome. There's an awful lot of work that's being done, we appreciate it.
If you'd like an update on that, we did visit 7 facilities on Monday, and it was a mixed team. So we had folks, IT specialists, real property, engineer types, myself, and we have quite a range of options. We're now narrowing the list, and I think we had a couple that were, throw out and not pursue, but we're now going to create a matrix because it's very hard. Two buildings are never like, this, and you compare the various pricing and amenities and access and all the other factors, and we'll come up with a matrix when we make our recommendation.
Great. Thank you, Jill. Any questions?
Yeah, so the part of what would be captured in the matrix is just the readiness to move in. Is that part of what you would be considering?
Yes and no. I mean, the ones that we've seen that are ready to move in really don't fit our needs very quickly. So it's going to take longer if they're ready to move in. We have some very specific needs, not just for our engineering groups and our admin groups, but also to have a boardroom. And that's not really something that any of the facilities we've looked at have. So one that's been stripped to a shell and that you can start from scratch designing what you need may have advantages. Those are the kinds of things we're looking at. And we'll get back to you, but we're certainly moving on it.
Great.
The locales are,
We're looking at a variety of downtown, meaning walking distance to DWR and state water contractors that have offices here and the Capitol, because we might have some interfacing with various members of the administration, to those who are on either bus or light rail lines, either in East Sac or West Sac. So there's a variety, there's a range, and we'll have to be looking at that and figuring out parking issues and, as I say, boardroom and, public access, security levels, a lot of factors.
Great. Thank you, Jim. We'll move right along then to General Counsel's report.
Thank you. The report is attached, and I just draw your attention to attachment 1. DCA is responsible for construction, but there's a number of things related to California Water Fix, and so this provides a timeline. I would just note a couple of items that the bold dates are firm dates, things that have already begun, and the rest of the dates are estimates, so they're my best guess for proceedings along with input from others. So again, they're not all applicable, but I think it's just helpful to have sort of a timeline of milestones as we move forward with water fix. And then you'll note at the bottom, construction date, and that's a big if date because there's a number of permits that we have to receive, or DWR has to receive before construction can commence.
Great. Questions?
So how often will this schedule be updated? On an as-needed basis or every month? Or?
I think on an as-needed basis, because this is really, most of these don't necessarily pertain to just sort of milestones for this year and beginning of next year.
Okay, thank you.
Anything further? And thank you, Steph, for all the resolutions. Very, very appreciated. Thank you. So that we're moving along. Treasurer's report?
I've provided you statements for both the month of June and July for 2018. These statements are consistent with the state requirements for joint powers authorities and that they're on a cash basis. So we have cash receipts and cash disbursements. I had already talked about June at the last report. So for July, the only receipts for the DCA JPA was interest that was earned during the month of June for $1,041. We had one invoice for legal services, so our cash at the end of the month is $785,116. And as you can tell, we're still in the startup phase, but we do expect the expenditures to start picking up in this month. I did want you to know that the DCA is covered by general liability and auto insurance at this time, and we finalized the directors and officers insurance, and that will be provided to Jill for her approval. And so we'll get that coverage in place as well. I know that's important to you. In terms of Metropolitan's work, we continue to make progress on establishing the enterprise accounting for the DCA. We do have a bank account set up, and once we're finalized with setting up the accounting, we'll be doing our testing and then be setting you up as a separate enterprise and begin, then we'll be able to report budget versus actuals as we get started. So we need to get the accounting set up, and then we can upload your budget data, and then we can start doing some more robust reporting in terms of just the statements that we've
So
been
when will the
providing.
accounting be set up?
Bernadette, how are we doing?
We're in the testing phase right now.
So we have it set up as a separate enterprise on our Oracle system, and so we'll be able to process all of the payments and receipts separately from Metropolitan Zone activities and process it through the DCA bank account. But it does take a little bit of time to get that set up.
And that timeline on setting it up is?
Probably by next month.
Okay.
And that's all I have.
Any other questions? Great, thank you, Jim. Thank you, Jim. We'll move right along then to any verbal reports.
Not today.
Any future agenda items requested? Any future items that we expect?
Other than our,
Other than our logo? Well, we got priorities. Stick to our priorities.
oh well, that's good.
It's a communication tool.
I will concede to whatever you guys decide, even if it makes me laugh. Okay, I can always do that.
It's already going to be approved. Thanks, Steve. Okay, if there's nothing further, then it's time to adjourn. Thank you all for joining us, members of the public and staff and council. Thank you.
Thank you.